Hey everyone, today we're going to be learning about spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are really neat tools that allow you to do mathematical equations within them and to store your data. If you haven't seen a spreadsheet before, a spreadsheet can look something like this. So as you see, there are lots of vertical columns and horizontal rows that you could enter data or numbers into to do and solve math problems. So first let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of spreadsheets, which I've already kind of told you a preview of. One of the big advantages is that your work is saved. I know there's been a time when you've entered a problem into a calculator and you go back to look at that answer maybe a minute or two later and your calculator has turned off and now you have to do the whole math problem over again. Well, something really neat about spreadsheets is it saves your work for you. So anytime you open up that spreadsheet, you'll be able to see those answers to those problems. Another big advantage is that they automatically recalculate when numbers are changed. This may not make much sense now, but I'll show you an example in a minute. Essentially, let's say you did a problem that was 3 plus 3 plus 7, and it gave you your answer of 13. Well, you realized it was supposed to be 10 plus 3 plus 7. Well, instead of having to add those three things together again, you could just change the first 3 to a 10 and it would figure out your answer for you. The biggest disadvantage to a spreadsheet is that you do need a computer to complete a spreadsheet. So if your classroom is not in a computer lab that day, or you don't bring your own laptop or iPad with you, you won't have access to your spreadsheets. Okay, we're going to be learning about 4 different things in spreadsheets. So if you don't already have a pen and paper, go ahead and pause the video now and grab one. If you're ready to go, the first thing that we're going to learn about in spreadsheets is what's called formatting. This means making the data look the way you want it to look. For instance, whenever you type up paper and you highlight the title and then you press the center button, or maybe you make it bold or underline it, that is also called formatting. It's making that text look the way you want to. Well, in a spreadsheet, you format the data to have the numbers look the way you want to. The second thing we're going to do is what's called a formula. And this is the basic math of a spreadsheet. This is entering a mathematical equation that will give you an answer. The third thing we're going to do is called a function. And it is kind of like a formula but more complex. A function is something that will be solved for you. You know functions because they have specific names like sum or average. If you think about having a column of a whole bunch of things to add up and then find the average of, it'd be really nice if you had a function that would just find the average for you. It would add them all up and then divide them by the total number after counting it and output your function. The last thing that we're going to learn about is how to make a chart or a graph in a spreadsheet. We're not actually going to do this in the video, but we will do it in class on Thursday, so we want you to be prepared to make sure you write this one down as the 4th thing that we are learning about spreadsheets. I want you to watch it as many times as you need to feel like you have a handle on it, and when you come into class on Thursday, we're going to expect that you're ready to go and ready to move on and create your first spreadsheet using all 4 of these elements. The first thing we're going to look at is how to format data, which I already told you is making your numbers look the way you want them to. For instance, right here I have a place to put a dollar amount, a percentage, and a number that has decimal points. But notice if I just put 5 in each of these, it remains just a plain old 5. Well, I want it to look like currency, but I don't want to sit there and type in the dollar sign and then the number 5 and then the period and then the zeros after every time. I'd rather it do that for me. So what I can do is click in that cell and then look at my toolbar up here and go to Format, because that's what we're talking about. And the first option is number because I want to format my numbers. And then notice I have all kinds of options. I have decimals. I have some that I don't even know how to use yet, and that's okay. I have currency, which is probably what we're looking at. And then I've even got date, time, hours, and plenty more that I can do if I need to. This one is obviously currency or dollars, and I want my dollars to have the cents after, so I simply click that. And now look, it's nice and formatted as a $5. Okay, let's go ahead and do percent now. I can go to the same place, format, number, and go down to percent. And I'm going to choose percent rounded. I don't need any decimals after my percent. And this is something tricky about percents. Notice I had the whole number 5, So it's not going to turn that into 5%. It turns that into 5 whole 100%. So it's 500%. So all I have to do to fix that is simply retype in my 5, and it'll make that 5%. For the decimals, if I always want it to show me 2 decimals after my whole number, I go to the same place, Format, Number, and then right here on decimals, choose 2 decimals. And so now it says 5.00. There's also a place right here on the toolbar that you can do these things. So I could have clicked here and then click the $sign, Format as Currency, %sign to Format as percent. And then the 1, 2, 3 will allow you to see the whole format menu. But again, going through Format, Numbers, and you can see all your options. Second thing we're going to talk about is how to make a formula. And remember, a formula is your mathematical equation. Well, I worked at an hourly rate of $5.10, which means I get paid $5.10 for every single hour I worked, and I worked 7 hours. So I would like to figure out how much money I earned. But with the decimal, it may take me a while, and I have this nifty spreadsheet so that I could quickly figure it out. So in a spreadsheet, we always start our formulas with an equal sign. It is the very first thing you always put in. That equal sign tells the spreadsheet, hey, I need you to figure out some math for me. Now, I could put in the number 7 times 510, but what if my hours work changed? Then I'd have to go in and figure it out again. So instead of putting these actual numbers in, what I'm going to do is tell it what space or what cell I want it to multiply. So I'm going to say I want it to multiply whatever is in this hourly rate cell by clicking on it. And notice it puts an A4 in because it's in cell A4. Then I put the multiplication sign in, which is an asterisk, which is above the 8 key on your keyboard. And then I click the other cell that I want it to multiply by and simply hit enter. And look, it does the calculation for me. So again, a formula does your mathematical calculation for you. And to review, the first thing you put in is the equal sign to tell it, hey, I need you to do some math. And then you put in your mathematical equation using the cells instead of the numbers themselves. And here's what's great. Look at this. $5.10 an hour, 7 hours worked, I made $35.70. Well, oops, I realized I actually worked 8 hours that day. So if I hit 8 and hit enter, it recalculates for me. I didn't have to go in and do the math or the formula all over again. That's the really awesome part about spreadsheets. Okay, the third skill we're going to look at how to do in a spreadsheet is a function, and this is an advanced type of formula. Functions can be found right here in this pointy looking E or sideways M or a sideways W. First, let's talk about what our task is. We need to find the sum of these numbers. Well, it wouldn't be too hard to use a formula like equals this number plus this number, just like we learned in the last section, plus this number, plus this number, and hit enter, and it gives us the sum of those. Great, nice and easy, right? Well, what if we needed to sum all these? Wouldn't it take us just as long to click all the numbers that we needed to add up as it would to just handwrite it out or put it in our calculator? It might even take longer. So they've built in some functions that will do the math for us. So I want my answer to be down here. So I could click in the bottom cell where I want my answer to go. And then I go up to my function button and I choose which function I want to do. And obviously I want to do sum because it says to find the sum. I click it. And now notice down here in the bottom it has sum and then it has 2 parentheses and my cursor is flashing right in between the parentheses. That is holding the place. It wants me to tell it all the numbers I want it to sum at once. So all I'm going to do is click in the top number, hold my mouse down, and drag all the way to the bottom. And now look, I've told it that I want to sum everything from C3 to C20. So C3, this is cell 3 here, to C20. Hit enter, gives me my total. Pretty simple, right? The same thing works for an average. Imagine if you had to find the average for all of these things. First, you have to count how many there were, so you'd have your denominator. Then you'd have to add them all up, so you have your numerator, and then you'd have to do the division. Well, I can click in the cell that I want my answer to go in, go up to my function button, choose average, and again I have that blinking cursor in between. So then I click the top one, drag all the way down, make sure I get all of the ones that I want to include in my average, and hit enter. And now I can see the average for all of these numbers is 30 point repeating ones. So that's all we're going to learn about spreadsheets for now. Hopefully you took some good notes. Like I said earlier, feel free to stop and re-watch this video if you feel like you need to. We will start right from here when you come into class on Thursday and learn more about spreadsheets, including how to make those charts and graphs. Don't forget to take your online quiz through Edmodo before coming to class on Thursday.